So what do the Royal Edinburgh military tattoo, the Old Guard, and the Popemobile have in common? It's Sergeant Major retired Mark Reilly, our good friend, CEO and president of the Washington Tattoo. Thrilled to have him with us today on the OakLines. Welcome to the OakLines, where veteran stories find new roots and our community helps them write their next chapters. I'm Ted Adair, a U.S. Army veteran and founder of the Oath and Oak. It's a gathering place and a storytelling platform built in Leesburg, Virginia. We share stories of veterans finding purpose in service, business, creativity, family, and community. Each one a new way forward. At Oath and Oak, we believe service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. It just takes new forms. Through conversations, through events and workshops, we dig into how creativity, community, and emerging technology help veterans shape what comes next. And we savor each story along the way. This is the OakLines. Stay rooted. Find your outpost. Super excited to have Sergeant Major retired Mark Reilly here with us today, and president of the Washington Tattoo. Mark has spent more than 20 years in the service, and Mark and I connected through a shared veteran community and connections right here in Leesburg and the greater Loudoun area. And, there's so many stories I want to get into, but to really tee this up, I think, career, just broad brushstrokes highlights. Served with the Old Guard. Got a chance through music and your expertise as an Army band and musician. 4 inaugurations, have met the Queen, I believe.
Performed for the Queen.
Performed for the Queen, performed for the Pope. And again, now CEO of the Washington Tattoo. And we're going to get into that mission set for Mark. But Mark, thanks for carving out time to sit with us today.
Absolutely, Ted. I am completely honored to be here. And your mission, I think what you're doing for the veteran space here so locally in Leesburg is incredible. I love the niche, and I'm grateful to be here.
Also, welcome to our friends at Rebellion Bar and Kitchen here downtown Leesburg. It's a great historic building, historic place. And again, this is our jump headquarters here for the Oath and Oak, and we get an opportunity to share this space with Mark and spend some time hearing about Mark's story, his journey as a veteran and his journey into the not-for-profit space and all of the entrepreneurial grit and rigor that comes with that. It's funny, you were just talking about musicians as kind of, you have to be a natural grinder and have your head on a swivel. I'm curious, is that something that was a learned trait for you, or was that something that you had in your DNA from the get-go?
That's a great question. I think I modeled it. I'm really into mirror neurons, right? So like kind of what you see, you kind of copy. I would definitely say from a young age, I was involved. I grew up in New York, and I did my first Memorial Day parade when I was about 6 years old. So, in the military music world, I've been connected to it since I was a kid. But my drum instructor, who was 75 when I was 11, was Nick Antanasio from Brooklyn, New York. And he would just bring me to gigs in the city. And he would introduce me to his other 75-year-old buddies, and later found out that these were musicians that were opening up for Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, later on opening for Frank Sinatra. And so he would bring these little Italian gigs in Hoboken and Newark, and then
I was just going to ask if Hoboken's own. As soon as you say for Sinatra, I think Hoboken immediately. Yeah, unbelievable.
So as a kid, I would just go to these gigs with him, and we'd play music together, and I'd meet these other folks. So I think it's probably something I learned along the way.
Was music in the family as well, as far as just aptitude?
So directly, no. Neither of my parents played music, but a crazy story about my grandfather, and I don't know if we want to dive into that now, but that was, and I share this often. My favorite grandfather died when I was 5, and I didn't really know why. I knew that, he taught me how to go fishing, throw a baseball, and I knew that he served in the Pacific during World War II. And then fast forward, I'm 11, I really get into drumming, and I met this legendary mentor, Nick Antanasio. Fast forward again, I graduate from high school, and my mother hands me a pair of beat up old drumsticks. I'm like, oh, these must be from Nick. And she's like, no, they're from your grandfather. No way. So she hands me these 2 photographs, one from the war looking all disheveled, beat up. But the second photograph was from 1936. And he was a snare drummer with a cadet uniform on in an American Legion drum and bugle corps out of the South Bronx.
Oh, wow.
So couldn't believe it. I had no idea. Fast forward again, my mother, being good Irish Catholics, we don't talk about our problems. It turned out the day that my grandfather turned 65, he left the VA hospital in New York, stepped in front of a truck and killed himself. And completely premeditated. He had a note in his pocket that said, "Don't blame the driver." And so a lot of the work that we're doing today with music and drumming really comes back to, if these were around, if these programs and resources were around for that time when my grandfather made that fateful decision, could I have ever played drums with my grandfather? And I'll never know. And so like, that's just a driving force of what I do today.
Had a conversation with some Vietnam veterans yesterday, and they also, remarked on just the amount of veteran support organizations like yours that are out doing good that just didn't exist in, let's call it 1966 to that 1974 time frame. And when I heard about what you were doing with music, and I can't wait later in the discussion, I want to get into a little bit of the science of how music and rhythm can help calm nerves and is a pathway to, I guess, kind of peace and stability. But I want to take this into a segment that I called net call. And as you remember from your time in the Army, we key that hand mic and we announce ourselves. So maybe you've got a favorite call sign that you had in the military or a nickname growing up, but we like to kind of get a little bit behind our guests as far as how they're referred to or how they refer to themselves.
Sure. So it was actually funny. I think people try to give me nicknames. They never stuck except for one. It was Rudy. And Rudy was short for Mr. Rudiment. So the rudiments of drumming, I came down. If you're into school for percussion, you can be a drum set player, you can be an orchestral guy, you can be a marching drummer. And so marching drumming, if you think about all of your big college marching bands, all have these amazing drum lines. The style of drumming that they're playing is actually a military style called rudimental drumming. So short for rudiments was Rudy, and they called me Mr. Rudiment, therefore they called me Rudy. When I took over as the senior enlisted for the Fife and Drum Corps at the Old Guards, the Old Guard's a really interesting unit. The Old Guard is the oldest active duty infantry unit in the U.S. Army. It was, Matt Anthony Wayne was one of the first commanders. It helped establish the first basic training in Beaver, Pennsylvania. So it's really, really a unique story. But the Old Guard today is the official escort to the President of the United States. And so it's an infantry regiment, 3 battalions. There's 2 at Fort Myer, or now Joint Base Myer-Henderson Hall. And in the 4th Battalion, you have the Fife and Drum Corps, which is a company inside of the infantry battalion, inside the infantry regiment. So it's a really unique place where you are a musician in the Army, but you're embedded inside of this infantry battalion. And it was really unique because we would always be at Walter Reed. We'd always go down to Brooke Army Medical Center. And that was one of the questions you'd ask too, was about that impactful moment. But you start to realize that, music is a unifier and it's a unification tool for connectedness. And so when these wounded warriors are receiving their treatment, or maybe their family's not there, and you're, seeing these folks in these really kind of isolating situations, military music immediately brings them a sense of connectivity. And one of the things that hit me was at Walter Reed, we were doing a performance for a wounded warrior class of officers that was there. And this guy was wearing a Yankee hat. So I walked up, he's like, "Hey, sir, how's it going? Are you from New York?" I said, "Yeah, I'm from New York too." And he was missing his foot. And I asked him, I said, you just saw us perform. What did that do for you? He goes, "Sergeant, you're second guessing your mission." I said, "Hell yeah, I am. I'm playing music. You're coming off the line and you got blown up and I'm playing drums." And he goes, "Do you remember the first time you ever felt pride?" "Yeah, you hear about it, but feeling it. Do you remember that moment?" I said, "I don't." He goes, "You brought me back to 4th grade history class. And the first time I felt proud to be an American. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, these were superheroes in the American story." And I get chills even thinking about that moment now. But when you start thinking about music in the military, it is a psychological connection to the values of America. And a lot of people don't really look at that if it's, something in a parade and it's passing and there's a million things going on. But if you take a set of really good headphones, or you go to an amazing concert and you're amongst that amazing musical experience,
absolutely,
it will transform you. I think we miss that a little bit in the military sometimes.
I love also the connection to memory and identity. I think that you're hitting on some powerful human connection emotions. For me, as an Army brat and as a combat veteran, I remember we lived in Germany when the Berlin Wall came down, and Dad was a part of the 3rd ID. And I remember the Army goes rolling along and the Dog-Faced Soldier, and you hear these iconic tunes that kind of connect back to our heritage. And it's not just from, I think World War II has its appropriate place in our pantheon, but I know that you've done deep research on military music across cultures and across continents, and how that actually carries forward to from early days of man. Where did this deep appreciation for music and the history, and then also the I'll call it the academic and science behind it, where did this all come from?
I'll show you. I'll first say where it did not come from. Growing up in New York, I was very much a New Yorker. I had a very thick New York accent. David Letterman's top 10, he did why New York City was the best city in the world. He gets 3, 2, 1. It was our city will kick your city's ass. I like fully believe that. And I went to undergrad in Louisiana from New York, and that was a complete cultural shift. But being in Louisiana, going to New Orleans and like going to Jazz Fest and seeing history in real time and Bourbon Street and this mixture of French, English, Spanish, African-American music, it was compelling to me. So I was really drawn into history, really drawn into music. 2005, I was a drummer with a group called the Top Secret Drum Corps from Basel, Switzerland. And if anyone knows about the Royal Edinburgh military tattoo, it's 75 years old. They built it after World War II in front of Edinburgh Castle. So you had this iconic castle. They have 26 nights of shows throughout the month of August in front of 10,000 people per show. So it's this massive, iconic military music event. And the U.S. has versions of it, but when I went in 2005, I got to meet now Brigadier Sir Melville Jameson, who was the CEO and producer. And he said, why does the United States or why does Washington not have a proper tattoo? Kind of didn't know what that meant. So I had to do my homework on what does a tattoo mean.
But at that moment in time, you were very accomplished and well into your own training and maturity and understanding of music and performing. And then to hear the concept of a tattoo, and then my dad, who is a huge classical music fan and also a veteran and military, he has always talked about his one experience going and witnessing the tattoo in Edinburgh, and just it's remarkable. I've seen video footage.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of people's bucket lists to go like once in their lifetime. And it's like, if you love music, if you love the history of the military, you kind of owe it to yourself to experience it once. But once you go, be careful, it gets addictive because it's 300 pipes and drums and drill teams from all across the world. I mean, it is literally from everywhere.
How many countries ballpark? I mean, if you had to throw a guess out there.
I don't know exactly how many countries, but I know they are engaging all corners of the globe. I mean, you're getting Middle Eastern bands, you're getting Chinese bands, you're always getting Australia, like Commonwealth bands. But they have casts that have been over 1,000 folks before for these performances. And that's where I had to do some homework after this 2005 was you were meeting people who were doing my same gig at the White House, at Buckingham Palace, the Vatican. And you're like, holy moly, like these people are all doing.
You had counterparts across the globe?
I had no idea. It was like the nerdiest, cool, band dork thing you could ever find. But when you got into it, these people were so proud of their military history through music. And so and just to even kind of share, we'll start with just the tattoo term.
Sure.
So the military calls that you hear reveille now, you hear taps, like those are two iconic calls we still use in the U.S. military. But back in the day, the soldier wasn't rich enough to own their own watch.
That's right.
So the watch was the drum. So it was part of reveille, it was church call, it was mess call. And if you go to West Point, the Hellcats are still marching the troops. They're still marching the cadets doing those calls. So when you take the idea of these were all different points of the day, tattoo is actually a Dutch military call, do dun tap toe, meaning to turn off the taps. And yes, the beer taps. It was last call for alcohol played on the drum. And so that would send the soldiers back to barracks. Over the years, that turned into an evening ceremony of military music. And the biggest one now is in Edinburgh, Scotland.
It is, I mean, for you on a personal level, there's got to be a tremendous amount of responsibility that you felt, not only in the performance itself, but there is an element of diplomacy and collaboration and foreign nation partners, all of that interaction. Maybe you could share what you took away from that.
Sure. No, and I think that opened my eyes in 2005 of that, being a New Yorker, being American, and has kind of having those blinders on, it opened my world up that there were people who were doing this, and a lot of these traditions are hundreds, if not centuries of years older, than Americans' history. So even to look here on this drum on the sides, there are battle streamers. And so in the Army, in the U.S., the Fife and Drum Corps with the Old Guard, you had music being played at, with the Seminole Indians, like the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Mexican, so all those battle streamers.
In the midst of engagements, right? This is not just, in the rear lines where we're providing comfort to but, actual percussion to move troops forward, if we're talking about the early days.
So if you think about military communications, when we talk about satellites, we talk about signals, this was the signaling instrument between the 1617s and into the early 1800s. So when you wanted to take out the communications on the battlefield, in a gentleman's war, you were not supposed to shoot the officers, not supposed to shoot the musicians, because then it would become lawlessness on the battlefield. But this was the commander's voice on the battlefield, was the drum. So if I played ba-ra-ba-ba-ra-ba-bum, that would charge, go, flank right, and you play these different rhythms, and that would be how von Steuben at Valley Forge trained the Continental Army to actually move in sequence with each other.
I think about that in terms of ciphers to be able to transmit a message to somebody. I mean, it's not too dissimilar from how we would load up the ComSec on our Singars radios, right? You're masking the communication so that you're able to communicate with friendlies and prevent interpretation from...
So when you go to this idea of diplomacy, the last 5 years I was active, I was involved with Army policy writing. So when you talk about the cultural side and the diplomacy side, there's now an organization called the Society of International Rudimental Drummers, SEERD. And it's a collection of 40 countries that get together every 2 years in a different country to share their military drumming tradition. And it's people from Singapore, the Vatican, from the Norwegian Kingsguard, from Buckingham Palace. I mean, it is the who's who in this military drumming space. And so it's really a powerful tool to take very historical things that maybe on the surface seem dry, a little boring.
Sure.
But now it's like you connect that with marching bands and Big Ten. You talk about, the president's own at the White House, at Buckingham Palace. You talk about the geopolitical things that are happening right now. The Old Guard just did a concert in front of Buckingham Palace with the Scots Guards, with the Royal Marines during President Trump's last visit there. It's happening now. It's taking history in real life. It's making it exciting, and it's making it relevant to today's youth. So it's super exciting.
I love that you brought in the Big Ten, because I think that there also is an element of, football certainly is a part of our culture. And you see the marching bands go out and perform, to a standard of excellence that certain even military folks look at and go,
well, as you have to look, I mean, some of these marching styles are really unique. So if you talk about Big Ten, there's a style. Talk about SEC, there's a style. Talk about HBCU, there's just tons of styles.
Interesting.
And if you get into where it started, it was their ROTC or their cadet program that created the marching bands.
When you would get together with foreign partners and they would also introduce their drumming approach techniques, could you hear a familiarity, and then could you also pick up on the distinct uniqueness of each?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are very basic universal rhythms that happen, right? So if we're going to be marching, you need a very heavy downbeat. So heavy left when you're on the parade field, boom, boom, sure, boom, boom. Like if it fits inside of that, you can start to finagle the style. So what's called the double stroke roll is 2 strokes on a hand, left, left, left. That's universal. Single stroke, same thing, right, left, right, left. When you combine those, you can do a single stroke, then a double stroke. It's called a paradiddle. And you actually would go right, left, right, left. That is universal across almost every single, I think it even goes back to almost the Greeks and the Romans had some kind of style like that. But when you start to talk about ornamentation, it gets hyper nerdy. It gets very specific. Is it Scottish? Is it British? Is it French? Is it German? And they all have gone off the rails where it's like, all of those styles are so unique that you can't actually tell sometimes what's happening. So the French Republican Guard has an amazing band. They have Napoleonic drummers who come out in full kit. There's French drumming rhythms that I can't actually tell what's happening because it's so fast, it's so ornamental, and there's these single strokes so quickly kind of zipped in there that my ears are pretty developed, and I still can't catch all the things that they're doing.
I'm curious, as we kind of move into this next section here, what do civilians miss about music's healing power? You've built a new tradition out of your own military service into the Washington Tattoo. And as you explain the meaning of music to people, maybe what do civilians don't pick up on or don't understand?
The thing we need to all recognize that music is primal. Like it is. It goes back to sitting around a campfire making sounds and singing and chanting and beating on stone or beating on log drums. Like it is that old. So rhythmically, if you think about your heartbeat, you think about 60 beats per minute right? And you talk about what is a good resting heartbeat. What does double time mean? Double time or quick time in the military is 120 beats, was supposed to be double the heartbeat. There are very primal things about music that allows our heart to find rest and to regulate. So when we think about meditation and we think about the breath and we think about in for 4 or out for 4 or in for 8, out for 16, and we start to think about, measuring our breath, musical phrases actually will help you fit breath really, really well. So what we started to do with how to appreciate music is, number one, I could be at a dinner party. I can just have music on in the background. Am I paying attention? No. But there's a feel to it, whether if I have dinner jazz going on versus Slayer, it's going to feel different, right? It's going to be.
And who hasn't had Slayer on in the midst of a fine dining experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's passive listening where it's on in the background, right? Then there's active listening where oh, wow, ooh, I like that. That's a rhythm that makes me kind of want to maybe move a little bit, or I'm paying attention to that. There's a hi-hat, there's a guitar, maybe that's steel drums because I'm in the Caribbean and that's going to feel different. So if you're in a different location and you're having a different experience, I'm on the beach, I'm getting my margarita, whatever it is, and I was to hear bagpipes, kind of doesn't fit, right? If I hear a steel drum, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And then you start diving into, I'm actively listening, but it's also speaking to a culture that I'm now exploring and I'm experiencing. So we talk a lot about passive listening, active listening, music creation in the moment, and that becomes experiential, right? So even if I am at a bar and I hear someone doing karaoke and I start to sing along to John Bon Jovi, right? And it's my life and blah. Now your brain is firing on a completely different level because now you're creating music with lyrics. Those lyrics are triggering a memory. Sometimes those memories are good, sometimes they're bad. So we basically at the Washington Tattoo have figured out a training to use a skills-based training using music as a tool for emotional regulation and connectedness.
Interesting. I love the idea that you can kind of, speak it into existence is also a phrase that I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs about, and I'm getting that piece. But your point about being able to curate and create moments, I think, is very important for veterans who may have found themselves withdrawing, may have found themselves disconnected. And I think in this era of, forgive me, I'm looking at my phone here with the script, right? Getting human connection into the mix.
Well, you're hitting on a huge point, and then huge shout out to Babs Chase with Face to Fight. But Babs and I were working on my project for the Bush Institute, and we were discussing what is the problem, right? There's a lot of folks that talk about what the problems are, and we labeled it as isolation, and it's that disconnectedness, right? So what is the solution for isolation or disconnectedness? Connectedness. And how can we create connection? And music is a no-brainer. And so when you're talking about these moments and you're talking about the connection points, with your kids and that song, and I mean, all of a sudden it's happening organically. Yeah. And the organic connection is where trust comes into play, which is a huge problem in the veteran community because they don't feel like they usually can openly trust others that haven't been their same experience. And music immediately kicks that door down. No, and it's funny because we didn't expect this. We were built as a 501c3 music and education, kind of just an education nonprofit. Sure. And around 2022 is when we started doing live events coming out of the COVID timeframe. And after every event, we had vets coming up to our staff and just pouring their guts out. Brutal stories. GWAT vets, I made it back and Johnny didn't make it back. We used to go to the bar. We used to do karaoke at this, whatever bar, and we sang this song together, and he played that tonight. And immediately I went back and I was there, and it was okay, great. We had Vietnam vets sharing brutal stories of getting ambushed in the jungle, but it was this idea where, and I share this a lot. I mean, we're using music as a weapon. Yeah. We're using music as a weapon for connectedness and to fight isolation. And when you look at, how you can curate that recipe for a moment. That's a product, right? We're getting pretty good at it, where it's not where we're trying to sell this product because we're not making tons of money,
Sure.
but the business is washing its own face. Like, we've been able to, get that business model where it's smartly done. But the magic for us is, I can picture, there's been a couple moments where I watch a World War II vet, and they were like struggling to get out of their chair. They've got their hat on, and it's for the Army song, right? And they're just, come hell or high water, they're getting out of the chair to go sit up and sing the Army song. Their son, who's a Navy or Air Force or Army vet's like, we're connected. We're going to stand together in unison. And then you see the grandson looking at dad and looking at grandpa as like superheroes. And then I go back to that comment that officer made to me about creating that moment that you can build superheroes in a multi-generational setting, but it's all wrapped in service. And it sounds theatrical, but we're getting damn good at that. And that's, if something I can give that back to America after 20 years of service, I'll do that every freaking day.
Yeah. And be able to put your head on the pillow at night and know that you've done something that was true to you, true to your talents, and in service of other people. I think that also your comment on the conversation you had with the veteran who reminded you that your contribution to him took him back to 4th grade. I talked to a lot of men and women veterans who sometimes express that they don't feel like that their service was on par with someone else. I would never put my service or contributions in comparison to other people. Immediately, I think about the men and women in uniform who serve at Dover, and they oversee the dignified return of the remains of our fallen. And those are individuals who served, they raised their hand. And so for me, if you have raised your hand and you serve your country honorably and you feel disconnected, what I want out of this experiment here is for a platform to build a community where people can come in, write their own next chapters, and figure out what comes next. And I love that music is your medium to do this, because it's so specific and it's unique, but also so universal.
I think you hit the nail on the head on a couple of topics there. And one is, when I joined up, I felt hyper guilty because when I went to basic, I was at Fort Sill. I was with all combat medics except for 3 of us in our battery. And it was me, a National Guard trumpet player, and a Black Hawk engineer. And I was like, why is everybody else a combat medic? Oh, we were just about to do the invasion of Iraq. And so when I look at that, and I know that's dating me, I'm a young buck to a lot of folks out there, I felt very guilty, especially going to Arlington Cemetery as my duty station and watching Section 60 become Section 60. During my career in active duty, we would do flags in every Memorial Day, right? So you're putting all the flags on every tombstone, saluting the Medal of Honor recipients and all of that. And so I will tell you, I struggled coming out of service because there was some mentorship that was not perfect for me.
Sure.
But I also kind of was not sure of what my service meant, because inside the infantry, you're the band guy and you're going to get made fun of. That was just something I also kind of lived with, right? I also got very comfortable with it, where at the end, I had an infantry first sergeant, I'll leave his name out because I was a sergeant major and it would kill me for saying that. But he pissed me off, and I had to pull in a line infantry company first sergeant, and she was rear end, because he did the wrong thing to some of my soldiers who I knew that was the wrong thing to do, and I pulled him aside and did the sergeant major thing.
Sure.
And after he was done, he asked to speak candidly, and I was like, yeah, go ahead, first sergeant. He goes, that was awesome. I got my ass chewed by a band guy. I was like, I could have stopped and I laughed about it, but I went, in the military, you've got to figure out your role and your mission.
Sure.
If you're authentic about it and you respect other people's mission, man, you're making friends for life, and they'll kick down doors for you. And I think that was something in military music, getting comfortable with that uncomfortableness of that. We knew we weren't going to be on the front lines, but we needed to do everything we could with our mission. And I think I have more clarity now with that as a veteran.
Yeah.
That's allowing me to do something with the Washington tattoo without any handcuffs, to really explore that space of what is the power of military music. And, even us helping vets, we're also helping active duty and Guard and Reserve folks with some of these challenging situations of yeah, you're a band guy. Get comfortable with the weird, because it's going to be weird.
So I love everything about what you just described, because I think that's also going to help other veterans who may have self-doubt about their own contributions. And I think that there are a lot of veterans that feel that their service in certain places was maybe not worth the effort and not worth the lives that were spent. I've had my kids start to ask me questions about that, and I've had a hard time articulating that. But I go back to, if you've raised your hand and you've served this country and you've done it honorably, then you deserve all of the benefits of the support and recognition that this country should give back.
Well, and I think that's amazing, because I fully agree. And number one, and if you look at tiers of just like excellence, right, and you put that special forces community out there, and I frame it that way because it's easier to at least comprehend it.
Sure.
There are levels of excellence where people are doing their job, and it's like inside of each MOS, you're going to have folks that are at different levels of excellence, right? And so when you look at SF and you look at Delta, I mean, like, those are the folks that the movies are
Olympic caliber, professional soldiers, sailors, Marines.
So, and you look then at, if you talk Olympics and you enjoy baseball, you can't take away that you should take time with your kids to go throw the ball in the backyard and enjoy that experience, because that's a meaningful experience. Because you didn't make the MLB, the NFL, or the all USA team, that doesn't mean it didn't mean anything. And I think, and we probably will talk a little bit about this, but I just finished up the Bush Presidential Center is the Stand To Veteran Leadership Program. And the first thing that we did, Todd Connor walks us through imposter syndrome. And I've heard of it. I kind of played around with this. What does that mean to me? We sat in it for about a good 20 to 30 minutes individually. In your journal, write down what imposter syndrome means to you, because everyone has it. And it may not that you have it forever, but there's a season in your life or in your career that you're like, what am I doing here? And if you have never had that, be careful, because it may be coming. And it's better to have that multiple times over earlier on in your career than get smashed in the face with that at 50 or 60 years old, because all of a sudden you've had your own cementing of your thoughts and ideas.
Your identity. You could find yourself having your identity, eroded, or you're doing self-harm to your
brother. It is, and it's scary, because in the work that we're doing with the tattoo, we're a magnet for broken vets, and we want it. We're proud to be that magnet. Yeah. But in that moment, our team's got to be capable and prepared. And that's honestly where we do a lot of our training with us bringing on facilitators, is knowing that I've lived those moments, other band folks who have lived those moments, but not all band people get it.
Sure.
Maybe there's an infantry, maybe there is a motor pool guy that also is super into music, or an MP. We have an MP that's a part of our program and so into music, had a brutal time during the deployment. We talk about suicide prevention all the time. I've definitely had a lot of my folks that we've dealt with suicides. My last 6 months active duty, in the regiment, we had 7 attempts and 5 completions. I mean, it's surrounding us. So what do we do, and how do we deploy music so that won't happen? But usually the people who are best equipped to handle it have been broken by it in some form or fashion. So there's a point where it's my job to inspire these folks to say, look, that's a tool. That's a weapon in your toolkit. Yeah. And I'm going to teach you now how to be powerfully competent in using music as this tool for emotional regulation and connectedness. And so really where I look at what we're talking about, where it's Olympics and you have to come to grips where imposter syndrome is real.
Sure.
We all have it. How we deal with it is going to be hyper unique, because you're going to need to find a way that sits not on the shelf where it's put away, but it's not going to interfere with your capacity or ability to make amazing things happen. And that's usually where imposter syndrome comes in, stabbed a hole in the tire as you're going 60 down the road.
Yeah.
And it's you kind of have to smell it coming. You're like, oh, whoa, let me take a knee for a minute and get my thoughts right, and be able to use imposter syndrome as fuel instead of it being something that takes me off the road.
So I love that comment on fuel, because one of the things we want to do with this Oath and Oak brand is reaching veterans and inspiring them on what their next chapter could look like. And the intent is to build this community of mentors, entrepreneurs, and you've had an amazing non-for-profit focused entrepreneurial journey that's come with, I'm certain, a lot of lessons. So what I want to do is shift to my next segment, is called Target Locked. So what's your mission now? And I'll ask, really, what's the heartbeat of the Washington Tattoo? And then how did mentorship factor into your ability to build this organization?
Sure. So our tagline is harnessing the power of music to heal, to connect, and to unite. That is the driving force right now. And so what we've decided to do with the Washington Tattoo, from just doing basic events, is hyper lean into this veteran mental health space. We have two pillars of the organization. One is the philanthropic give in the veteran mental health space, and the second is putting together world-class musical performances. And so those work hand in hand. I wouldn't say failed, but maybe the level of excellence is pretty low. So yeah, I guess probably could call it failure. But it was in the for-profit space. It's a couple small companies that, were, very thoroughly thought through. There was a niche for it. The revenue model of it was not super sustainable. So that was a thing I had kind of learned as some side hustles over the last 10 years. So the Washington Tattoo is not my first venture into starting something, kind of like a startup phase. The other part of it is I volunteered for multiple nonprofits for many years. And so the Percussive Arts Society is a nonprofit I have supported for over 22 years. It's the largest drummers society on the planet. So I was on the marching percussion committee, which essentially is all things marching percussion. That is all of your military bands that do, marching drums. It is every single university in the United States that has a drum line. I mean, literally all of them. And then any percussion school that has a percussion, a military drumming slant to it. So if I go to music school and I'm going to be a percussion major, I have to learn marimba, xylophone, timpani, snare drum. Like, I have to learn all that in my private lessons. And the snare drumming component of the requirements of those universities usually has what's called the Pratt book, which is he was the drummer for the West Point Hellcats in the 60s and 70s. And the Pratt book is kind of like the gold standard of how you would learn marching drumming just starting up and if you get into university level. So the PAS is what they call it, Percussive Arts Society. They have what's called PASIC, Percussive Arts Society International Convention, and they host, it's about 6,000 drummers that come to this convention in Indianapolis, which is every November, just came back from it. But you're bringing in all of the military drummers, all of the drum set players, the world percussionists, the orchestral players. And so over the last 22 years, I chaired their largest committee for 5. I was the one who was bringing in the panelists for the panel discussions. I pissed a lot of people off when they didn't get selected for a clinic, but I was able to meet Chris Lamb, who is the principal percussionist for the New York Philharmonic, Paul Rennick, who runs the top drum line down in North Texas and Santa Clara Vanguard and the DCI world, all of these amazing percussion folks. But I got to watch the business model of how PASIC operates. And their executive director, Joshua Simons, has been a phenomenal friend. He's like, Mark, come here. Let me help you show you how to do some of this. And then the other one would have been Stuart McLaurin from White House Historical, who's like, Mark, here's how to do this. And so the mentorship piece has been huge.
And it sounds like organically you've been able to find those kinds of mentors in your life, all connected through music.
Yeah. And so, I mean, to say this is a quote. If anyone knows Brandon Turner, he was the host for Bigger Pockets podcast. He was phenomenal. Now he's doing a Better Life podcast, which is another phenomenal one, but it's real estate generally focused, but a lot of just great leadership lessons. And one of his comments that he made was, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, right? It's like, oh boy. So, transitioning out, I was surrounded specifically by music folks. Yeah. And my wife's like, hey, you may want to kind of figure out some business stuff because you're probably going to get punched in the gut a bunch of times. And so that is a big piece of it. But again, with Oath and Oak, please, anyone of your listeners or anyone here, consider me a resource. When you look at music, and I take some of the Bush lessons learned was number one, they want to set the table for quality relationships. Like that is a number one thing, right? And so that's one part. Another piece that they talked about is intellectual humility. Like if you're really good, like people will tell everybody else how good you are. Yeah. If you're out there saying, "Oh, I'm so," like, you're immediately going to get sniffed out. Like, don't do that. That's an indicator immediately. But then the third part is, if you're able to give back, just do it. Right? It makes everything else so much easier. And if you're giving back is like, I'm just going up to show, like, hey, I'm going to volunteer at Travis Manion. I can do like 10 hours. We're going to go like wash the Vietnam Wall. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Because you're going to show that you're not so big that you won't pick up a broom, right? You go over and you're going to help get, some sweat equity involved. And that means a lot to people. And it's weird because it's organic and it's natural. And if you end up getting involved through servant leadership, music has been the groundwork for a lot of that for us. Is like, we're going there not trying to make business connections, but you treat people with respect, you don't be an a-hole, and then you just find collaborative space, and it's magic.
I think all of those lessons can kind of cascade across our community, and I think more people need to hear those messages of intellectual humility and how to work well with people. I do think that veterans by our DNA are more service oriented because you have raised your hand and been willing to put your life on the line. And I think that there are organizations like yours that have built up our reputation for servant leadership. And I think modeling it and demonstrating it is what's going to give rise to this next. We were talking earlier, kind of it feels like a shift of seasons where post 9/11 veterans are now becoming more and more engaged or falling into senior leadership positions in various different aspects of American life. And that intellectual humility that you just described, I think, can go a long way to forging those authentic connections and relationships.
It's interesting you say that. And there was a third one. There's a third leg to that stool, and I always am trying to remember it because intellectual humility is huge. Setting the table for relationship excellence. And then third is the value of courage. Be courageous, especially in the entrepreneurship space. Again, I'm going to give Todd Connor a shout out. There was a whole bunch of questions I had for him. I was like, and Todd Connor is founder of Bunker Labs, like, phenomenal program. And a bunch of questions I was asking Todd, he's like, hey, I'm not telling you to like buy my book, but like read Third Shift Entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, okay. And man, I couldn't put it down. And there was a piece of that where like that value of courage to like, if you have the crazy idea, just start mapping it out, start writing it, like start exploring it.
I want to ask that because I do think that in your profession, 20 years in the Army, there's an element of courage of getting up on stage. And folks that are used to that, like my daughter's in theater. And so encouraging them to be out and about. And it's learning how to speak publicly or speaking, not necessarily with your voice, but through percussion or there are veterans right now that are sitting back and not only are they disconnected or they are not engaged with their communities or they're stuck on a device. What's your message to them about tapping into that courage? And candidly, I'm trying to eat my own dog food a little bit here with what I'm doing because I don't consider myself a tremendous public speaker, but I know that putting veterans' journeys and telling these stories is something that I'm passionate about. And so it's allowed me to put myself out there. What do you have to say to other veterans that need to find that ability if it's not native to them?
That's a phenomenal question. So we all scroll. Unfortunately, I would love to meet folks who don't scroll because I want to learn their secret. But if they're scrolling, you're typically stopping on something that's of interest to you, right? There's probably things that are valuable and there's probably things that are not valuable. There's probably stupid stuff that you're scrolling through, but there's probably occasionally you're like, oh man. And there are these guys like I really got into that were like building these outdoor shelters, like, and they're digging in the mud and they're like chopping it all up, and it's kind of like in fast speed. I couldn't stop watching it.
I think I've seen this. Is it like all hand done with
like bushcraft or something?
The hyperspeed thing. But you're watching this thing come on. Yeah, it's amazing.
And so what we've all learned, right, in boot camp or basic training, and again, specifically going in, you don't need to be the Delta Force of this stuff, right? We've all done FTXs. We've all done if you've been downrange, like you're doing stuff with your hands.
Yeah.
And that's creative, weirdly enough. Like you're being creative with your hands. So I would challenge, if you're a scroller and there are things that you catch yourself that are of value and you stop on them, the next step is note them down in a journal.
Yeah.
And start taking note of the things that you're stopping on, because they have some kind of intrinsic value, or you would not have stopped on it. So number one, take note and realize and be aware of the things that you're stopping on. Secondly, once you write them down, see if you can start to capture like a cadence of like the things that they're doing. Is it woodworking? Is it glassmaking? Is it drawing? Is it writing? Is it painting? President Bush right now is really into art. And we unpacked his book, Decision Points.
Yeah.
And he personally struggles with certain things, that like decisions that he had to make. And it's in the book about like, how the information he was given at the time and blah, 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 blah. And it was really powerful to read that book, recognize that he's one of the smartest people I have ever, like unbelievably smart, super fast, incredibly funny, and then so human, so personable. But he breaks down just what art has done for him. And it was like the touching of the canvas and the painting and seeing an image and like having to wrap his brain around the image to make this art. So I think us as a military community, we love doing things with our hands, but we were forced to decision make. Even if you're an E4 that got out, like there were things you had to like, if you didn't decide to like
in the absence of guidance, you make a decision and then you execute violently.
Yep. And so we all were embedded inside of the greatest social experiment of history, the U.S. military. It broke us down and it rebuilt us back up. And so that is part of your story. And some of it may be good and some of it may be bad, but pull from that. Look at what you're doing. If you're starting to isolate, there are things you're probably isolating, and you're replacing the in-person time with something else that's eating that time.
Sure.
So, and writing with a pencil or a nice pen or on a piece of paper, there's something cathartic to that. So I love writing in a book, get an old school book out, and it allows my brain to then get out
in a new thought process, your leadership process. It's just a small example. And I think that pouring yourself into those actions, and there's no doubt in my mind that you've experienced that throughout your career. And I would argue that through music, you actually had a leg up on the rest of us that were just regular Army folks, because you came into your transition ready-made with a healthy outlet, something that you could pour yourself artistically into. And for, veterans that are out there that are seeking something for like that, maybe you could share how the Washington Tattoo could be an avenue.
So yeah, we host workshops and cohorts to get granular. And so, like I said earlier, 2022, we started hosting events. So we do a lot of veterans facing events. We do a lot of stuff downtown in DC, but we also now have branched out across the country doing different events in Indianapolis, Dallas, Texas. We now have some folks now in LA. We're in New York. And so it could be as simple as saying, hey, I want to come with you guys. I want to be a part of this parade. So we were part of Warner Music Group and Amazon Music and Creative Vets at the New York City Veterans Day Parade last week. And like, that was just being around other vets, talking about music, talking about what it does, like, and just sharing stories. So that's like a very easy low lift. And, we encourage folks to do that. We do a lot of parades. We also do an annual flagship event. So the Washington Tattoo is an official America 250 partner recognized by Congress for the semi-quincentennial of the United States in 2026. So we have an event coming up July 17 and 18, 2026. That's going to bring music groups from all across the country. We have Native American groups coming in. We have the U.S. Army Field Band, the Fife and Drum Corps, from the Old Guard, the Commandant's Own.
Does First Cav have any?
You know what? We need to get First Cav's horses.
I might know a guy. Let's see if we can work.
That would be great. No. But then we have, Highland dancers coming from Australia, and we have singers coming from Scotland, bagpipes and marching. I mean, like, this is just something that we're really passionate, is like taking all of this wealth of military history of music from the global traditions of this cultural diplomacy thing that we unpacked, and giving that back to our military veteran community today. And so that's a gift. The military gave me my life. If I can take those blessings, I don't need more stuff on my CV. I feel like I've lived 3 lives. The fact that we can take this and bless other people with these amazing experiences, and take veteran or military families, and we just partner with exceptional military families with Austin Carrig, and say, so that we're going to do a Thursday night performance just for exceptional and special needs
for folks that might not appreciate or understand. Exceptional military families is largely
disabled families.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking about cognitive disabilities and things of that nature. And it's so meaningful for us. And it's easy. Like we're treating them like royalty at a musical event.
Yeah.
And so when those families, they've come back to us and they say, just having a night to be okay with our situation, and you don't treat us differently, and you welcome us and you treat us with hospitality, man, it feels so good to be able to do that for those families. And so, yeah, that's from the event side of the house. That's this pillar. But then on the wellness side, we've done now workshops. We're going into year 5, where we've partnered with the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, and we do a historic military music workshop in Williamsburg. Year 5 doing that. We are now in year 2 going to the DC VA Medical Center. And so their CLC is their, I think it's kind of like their long-term care clinic. It's 80 beds of like Korea and Vietnam vets that have minimal family in the area. So like we're working hand in glove, like in the VA hospital. And these are like, it is not glamorous. It is brutal when you're in there. The testimonies we get back from these veterans, like, will make you cry, because they feel like they're not forgotten. They're valued. They have dignity again. And as you walk in there and the smells, these people are all in wheelchairs. It's pretty brutal. So what we've done is we have a wonderful relationship with Fisher House. There's a Fisher House on that campus. Next year on that same campus is Children's National Hospital. We're just going to bring those same folks over to Children's National. And so this is so easy to do. And so we've been finding folks who want to sponsor this stuff. And they're like, man, if like we gave you $2,500, if we gave you $5,000, if we give you $10,000, we're multiplying this effort across the country. And so if vets are interested, we have a volunteer portal on the website, which is www.thewashingtontattoo.com. We have a .org as well, so it's all kind of in there, but there's a volunteer page you can hop in. You can either volunteer for one event, you can be a part of one of the cohorts or workshops that we have. So there's multiple ways to actually get in and get kind of hands dirty on some things. If you're not a musician, we kind of have a music appreciation kind of course. That's a four session course.
I love that.
Where it walks you through
Awesome.
passive listening, active listening, and music creation. And the only creating you're doing is breathing in time, breathing out of time, listening to different styles of music so you can kind of unpack what you're listening to. And then 3, we kind of like mess with people a little bit, and we have like sit in your chair. It's hybrid, so it's virtual, and there's an in-person component where like, all right, let's stand. What does your posture look like? Where is your breathing? Is it coming from your diaphragm, your throat, your chest? Are you slouching? And this awareness piece of how do you use music as a tool when you're sitting in the car and you're just listening to tunes going, like if I do that, my back does feel better.
Yeah.
Like I'm breathing. I got an awareness of my body, of where things are. I'm being more alert. I'm calm. And then after we do that, we start to clap with feet movement.
I love it.
And as the people are doing that, usually somebody screws up because they can't do the breathing, the clapping, and the feet together. We laugh. But we also build playlists based on 7 emotions. And so we break down 7 of the most normal emotions. When you start to break down reverence, empathy, you start to talk about remembrance and focus. What are the tunes that you're listening to establish when I'm in a place of remembrance and I want to honor somebody? What's that playlist look like?
Yeah.
If I want to be inspired, what are the tunes that are going to get me up and rolling? And it's 1, to build the playlist, but it's 2, to use it as a tool when you're not in the headspace you want to be and you want to use it.
You want to change lanes.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's so incredible to think about that. You're curating almost a menu, taking the ingredients, and forgive the culinary metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're making the grade A dish with the intention of helping people regulate themselves. It's an amazing effort. I encourage everybody to go check out the WashingtonTattoo.org. And I want to use this as a transition point to the next segment here. This is the so there you were moment.
All right.
And I understand that maybe there was something on the White House grounds in line for the restroom.
I pulled off some notes for this because I wanted to make sure I got them correct here. So this was the state arrival for Pope Francis. And so, you do the rehearsals, you're out there with all the joint services, and you're out there with the Marine band. We were all waiting in line to use the restroom before they locked everything down. So there's this huge thing, and park services there. And where it was snaking around where the vehicles are all parked for the White House, right? It's like, I'm not talking about the beast. I look in this one garage, I see this white vehicle in there. Like, what is that? The Park Service guy's like, you want to see it? I'm like, is that the Popemobile?
No way.
And they're like, yeah, it is. I'm like, can I see it? He goes, yeah. Not saying who it was. I don't remember who it was, so hopefully we're not throwing anybody on the bus here. It was my Sergeant Jesse DeJesus and I ended up going. They were like, that's the Popemobile. And they're like, can we get in it? He's like, you can't sit in the red chair. So we have some photos.
Oh, that is brilliant.
Maybe, allegedly, there are photos that exist of us seeing the Popemobile, and I don't know, like, behind it. So
incredible. Was it now on when you get in the inside, was it tricked out, or did we have any?
It was like red, everything inside. I mean, it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen.
Now, when you honked the horn, did it play Amazing Grace, or did it? Okay,
hilarious.
just check.
Maybe Hallelujah. I don't know.
We'd have to figure out. Well, the musician here would have to curate that. Maybe that's the next gig for the Washington Tattoo. Is you can curate the Popemobiles.
I like that because I think Hans Zimmer has a contract with BMW to do that kind of that new sound effects.
Okay, Hans, you heard it here first. We've got a strategic collaboration in the works with the Washington. I want to transition now to one of the other segments, and we call this one Rucksack Drop. And this is an opportunity to share either an insight from your service, a belief that maybe you have altered because of access to new information or different life experiences. I'm interested in how has music shaped your mental health journey?
I will say there are seasons of our lives, and there are seasons of our personal journeys and seasons of our professional journeys, and often they don't align. And that's something I think a lot of folks, when they're traveling down the road and they hit a pothole, can easily get a flat tire. I know there's a lot of car references on this podcast. I apologize.
I'm sure the Popemobile has run flats.
One of the things that has changed very recently has been be careful of who you listen to that tries to downplay your service. Because I do think there are some folks out there that try on purpose to downplay someone else's service to uplift something that they're peddling.
Sure.
I don't like it. I see it too often, unfortunately. If you're a veteran that is struggling with the meaning of your service, be very careful of those 5 people that you surround yourself with, because the folks who are struggling, birds of a feather flock together. It is very dangerous to be with someone else who is struggling with that same struggle. So again, personal season of life, professional season of life. If you start to separate that and if you journal it, you may be able to see the difference between those two, and maybe the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with in that professional season are very different from that personal season. So I would almost ask those folks to contrast the two, and if they're aligned, you're probably cooking with gas. Sure. Like, that's actually good. That means you are. I don't believe in balance, unfortunately. Like I wish there was such a thing. I think you're constantly recalibrating management of the things that bring meaning to your life. And so if you find that there's someone in your 5 in the personal or professional circle that is detracting from the meaning of your service, you probably need to put them somewhere.
There were probably about 5 nuggets of wisdom in there that certainly resonate with me. One is the out of alignment with personal and professional seasons of life. And one of the things I want to see take root here in Oath and Oak is building out a community where, one, you get exposed to and get to interact with folks, frankly, like yourself. I think you'd be a terrific, and I'm certain that you are, mentor for others. Okay. And I think that getting those connections going in a community like we're building is going to go a long way to help veterans, one, get out of those spaces where perhaps they are listening to either the voice that's in their head or the voice that one of their 5 folks isn't giving them the right support and messaging.
No, thank you. And I'm so excited for you. And this probably for us, I guess, as we come forward together as partners on this, mental real estate is a real thing. Yeah. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry across so many state, federal, government, industry, corporate places. Yeah, you need to protect your mental real estate. And that's not just trying to find people that are just going to say yes to you. Like that's just as bad as folks who are downplaying your service. So again, you have to be super intentional one of the things that the Bush Center gave back, and I know I keep bringing that up a lot too, but they have this veteran leadership program, and I highly encourage people to apply for this program. It is unbelievable. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced. And I feel like I have experienced a lot. This thing changed my life. And being an entrepreneur, you have to sell your product. And when you use sales terms, you can sometimes lose the sheen, the shine of the meaning of some of those really powerful words because you're using them for a sales pitch. That institute gave me back the meaning of intentionality. And that to me was so unbelievably powerful because I didn't even realize it. Stopped me. It made me slow down. And it started with this imposter syndrome exercise. And I went, holy crap, this is good stuff. And when I talk about intentionality, it is looking at someone in the eye, slow yourself down. Like if you're successful, you're gonna be fast. There's a time where you need to be super fast.
Yeah.
Brandon Wilson has been a phenomenal mentor for me, even with inside my cohort at the Bush Institute. And Brandon is from North Carolina. He's been on several presidential task force. He's so incredibly smart. And he'd always talk about his mentors saying, look, on the day-to-day, be fast. But when it matters and it's strategic, give yourself the brain space to slow down to make good decisions.
Sure.
But when you're an entrepreneur, again, personal, professional seasons of life, they're dancing constantly.
Yeah.
And when you're picking up flowers to your wife because you haven't been home on certain nights and you're like you're doing the thing, you're doing the work. You got to balance again. It's managing. You have to manage that back and forth.
Well, you're right. It's a throttling and a regulation. You know when you ramp up and know when to dial back. And I love the thoughtfulness of sitting down and taking a moment to make those strategic decisions, because when veterans are very, very good at making decisions in real time because of all of our experiences, I think it's a different thing when you step out into either the corporate world or you go into the non-for-profits or you're going to be entrepreneurial, because let's be candid, there's money involved. And
Right.
when you're making decisions in the military, money is the furthest thing from
Right.
your brain housing. And
Yeah.
where I want to get with this platform is to get veterans to a place where they can be aggressive, have the courage, use all of those hard-earned skills, but surround them with the right, maybe it's the 5 people that are going to give them the smart, authentic advice they need to be able to write their next chapter.
Well, and I think this is a huge one too for entrepreneurs. Make sure your chicken and egg, cart and the horse makes sense. And at times they're going to flip. You're going to have things that are happening that you're like, oh boy, I wasn't prepared for that. Like that will happen. And part of that is capital. One of it is having financial means to do what you want to have happen, right? So if you have big vision, fantastic. Like keep the vision there and put it on burners. Like sometimes the back burner is exactly where something needs to be. So that recipe, that vision can sit and percolate and stew and get better. And it can be better over time, like a good wine. Or if there's the front burner things that you have to be fast on just to make the relationships happen, make sure that you are putting together some type of financial model.
Sure.
That what it is you're attempting to do is not going to outpace the other piece of it. And like, that's something, man, some great entrepreneur mentors of mine have really leaned in on that. And they said, look, you're going to be able to find the right people if you're in with the right intentions, you're authentic, and what you're doing is truly giving back. Like, that people just want to be around that. That's like, that makes people feel good in really uncertain times. And in Washington, D.C., every 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 to 12 years, the political landscape is going to change.
Sure.
So you need to expect that change to happen. And then subsequently in your state, in your county, those models are all going to change. So if your business model is only really attached to one certain type of political slant or whatever else, like, you've just got to be aware that that's a reality. And so being a nonpartisan organization in Washington, D.C., it's been phenomenal to kind of be able to split that line with, a conservative entity, which is the military, and a liberal entity, which is the arts. Like, I love it because it brings everyone to the table.
And I think those are the conversations that we need now quite a bit. And the uncertainty that you just mentioned, the job landscape is going to change dramatically in the next, it's already changed. We're already seeing it. And what my intention here is again, through coaching, through mentoring, through workshops, upskilling veterans, and a series of practices and tools, a lot to do with AI, but certainly other disciplines as well, and helping them to one, understand their own story, and then take that under their own story, what their knowledge, skills, and abilities are, and go and chart and find that next thing instead of sitting back and waiting for something to happen.
And like, yeah, I mean, people joke like there's so many things out there other than Chat GPT. There are, but once you find the Gronk or any of those other kinds that you love to do, Copilot, I know is a big one too, but you start to look at what that can do for scaling your business.
Sure.
It is incredible what we can do. And it's like, how do you stay ahead of just enough of the AI to be able to say, I'm going to utilize these as a tool, but with my specific story and my skill sets of those times of service, the times out, the good, the bad, the ugly of transition, you're going to provide value for other people that you don't even realize that have lived maybe some of your experience that are struggling where you succeeded. And you're doing that. Like, I completely feel like what you're doing here with Open Oak is leaning forward in the AI space, and you're hammering it. I love that. And think of the military service and like fire teams, right? The fire team's going to be a part of something bigger, right? The squad, the platoon, the company, the battalion. As soon as you start thinking about, if you've ever had any battalion staff training, I know that's a certain population of veteran, like you're going to need the S 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to like get the mission done. So in entrepreneurship, those are your partners, right? So when I first went out for my entrepreneurial journey, I was like, how the hell do I do this? Oh, wait, I'm going to take my S 1, 2, 3, and I went through HR, ops, training, all that stuff. And I went, who do I know that rocks at each of those components? And I like wrote a 5-person list of each of them. And I started hitting up my buds of like, would you want to be a part of this? Would you want to be and over the years, we've now had 3 to 4 iterations on those folks that, maybe they just want to be a volunteer. Maybe some want to be a financial contributor. Maybe some folks are like, well, I can't be, but I know a guy. And all of a sudden it's like, that's the basis of entrepreneurship.
And it's the power of networking and putting yourself out there. We're about to transition here to the last segments. I still have 2 to do. But before we do that, I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to highlight on this magnificent piece of artistry here that we didn't talk about earlier.
So we'll go back to Dodun Tap Toe, right? Okay. Turn off the beer taps. So this is a 18th century replica of an American field drum. So it's rope tension. This is an official presidential snare drum. It has seen 2 presidential inaugurations. It was used in the Obama inaugurations, and it was also used for the state arrival when I saw the Popemobile. Maybe sat in it. This was used during that arrival. But again, it's the old guard's drum. This was a buyback program that they had, through GSA. So this is mine. I got to, get my drum back. It has all of the battle streamers on it, going from 1784 all the way through to Iraq on the bottom here. On the front of the I don't know if you can see it here, but the shield is a presidential shield. The Old Guard is in the Battle of Gettysburg. So, I mean, you could see all these, Civil War battles the Old Guard fought in. But the battle that's actually depicted in the middle of the shield here is the Battle of Chapultepec. And it was during the Mexican-American War. Yeah. And if you go in the regimental headquarters, there's actually an old bayonet and a drum major baton. That's the Chapultepec baton. Because during the charge, during the Battle of Chapultepec, the Old Guard, they ran out of ammo, and the field music, which was the drums, the fifes, and the drum major, were part of the charge. And the drum major used the mace to schwack some combatants, and they honored that battle. And so the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, not the infantry division, was given the honor of marching ahead of the column in Mexico City at the end of the war. And General Winfield Scott had given the title of, "This is the Old Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, take your hats off for the Old Guard of the Army." And that was a Napoleonic term for the most honored position and the most fierce fighting force of the time.
So Old Fuss and Feathers himself was directly, that's unbelievable. I mean, that is epic, dramatic, and a testament to what our musicians and band members bring to a combat environment. I mean, the only modern equivalent I can think of is, I don't know if we're going to have drones shooting out of tubas or anything along those lines. Tell me honestly, has there been any R&D, and are you involved with anything along those lines?
We may need to keep that a little bit secret.
Okay, all right.
That's a good idea.
That's SCI.
So these are a pair of Washington tattoo drumsticks. So you can see the label on that. I'm not sure. But these are made by Loyal Drums. Loyal now has the contract of making the rope tension drums for many, many of this year of the premier military bands and a lot of the folks that are out in the field. So these are a gift from me to you, Ted.
This is unbelievable. Holy. Thank you so much.
So those are marching drumsticks, which are going to be much bigger than drum set sticks. So if you look at those drumsticks, you'll see that size of the drumstick used at marching bands and military.
I promise I'm not going to twirl these right now. I would embarrass myself and do it. This is unbelievable. And as soon as we open up our first brick and mortar Oath and Oak outpost, this will be on display there. In the meantime, it's going to go into my office at home, unless my son commandeers these, because he's got a tendency to find any cool stuff in my spot, and it migrates.
I'll get it house. That's perfect.
This is unbelievable. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.
We are going to transition now to the 5-minute fire mission. And I don't know if I've explained this for you to you, but essentially we got 5 minutes, one question per minute. I'm going to put you on the clock, and we're going to get some quick high-hitting questions out of you. So we're going to start with a phrase or an acronym that has stuck with you from your military service.
Bohica. And I'm not going to say what that is.
We'll put that one into the show notes for you. But what life lesson did you take away from that one?
Something is always coming at you, and it's how prepared are you to pivot or make a decision. So just be ready.
Trying to move fast. Another one I've heard is never be first, never be last, and don't volunteer for anything.
Amen to that.
Because you're getting called anyways. It's coming your way. All right, we hit that. We're ahead of target here. That's 30 seconds on that one. Most humbling moment in uniform, if you're willing to share. If not, I will share mine.
My most humbling moment was the first visit I ever took to Brooke Army Medical Center's burn unit.
Yeah.
Probably 2003, sometime around there, and seeing I couldn't even tell. This individual was was in such need of care that they were wrapped head to toe. And all I could say is, like, this is a 19-year-old kid that will never live another normal day in their life again. And so we got to play music for them, and you could see it in the eyes through the bandages of what it meant for them.
So I appreciate that story on multiple levels. Now I will share mine. My most humbling was quite similar. I was an Iraqi National Guard advisor in Iraq for 14 months, embedded as a captain, 7 Americans, 250 Iraqis. And one of the soldiers in our unit had gotten hit, and a group of us went to the cash hospital there, and it was right around Christmas. And the nurses were singing Silent Night, and I can never hear Silent Night the same way again. So the power of music and how it sticks in your memory is an incredible thing. Yeah. The next question, time on the clock. One thing every American should understand about veterans.
Veterans are the backbone of America from the beginning of the war, at the independence, when they came back, to being a farmer, to what they are today. So if you look at the greatest version of the American dream is taking some young 17-year-old who could have been an immigrant. Maybe they're not. Maybe they come from a lowly family and they don't have a lot of money. The U.S. military is the #1 vehicle for the American dream that's out there.
I love that because it resonates into other stories that we've gotten a chance to record right here downtown Leesburg. I've mentioned to you the Stephanie and Abraham Avila right up the street. Run Casa de Avila is a great story of service and then transitioning that service into an entrepreneurial venture and some of the best tacos you're going to have in the Northern Virginia area. So advice to your first day in uniform self. Go.
Oh boy, buy a lot of real estate and use the VA loan a bunch. I wish I had done that way earlier.
I thought you were going to say invest in NVIDIA. It would have been
that would have been smarter. Yeah.
So we're going to transition and that's the end of the 5-minute fire mission. We hit our time, your time on target. Last segment is forward march. And what I'd love for you to help leave with our veteran listeners and family members and others. How can they engage and support the Washington Tattoo?
Thank you. So yeah, America 250 coming up. 2026 is going to be a banner year for us. We are looking for volunteers. We are looking for folks that will help spread the mission and champion this veteran mental health through music program. So if you know folks that are interested in being part of our workshops or cohorts, please sign up on the website. If you have interest, follow us on all the social media channels. We are on all the major players. We do a lot of work with LinkedIn, but Instagram. And so if you've got kids involved, we love it. Be a part of what's going on with the kids. Make sure, if they are into Highland dance or in music, we can get you plugged in. We're not a private lessons organization. I just want to be very clear. Yeah. We are definitely an avenue for people to understand the power of music. We have a ton of events that you can come and just have a great time. But then if you want to get involved with guitar, music, in a deeper level, drums, we have a ton of partners that will do that private lessons side of the house or plug you in with a band. But we want people just to understand the power of music and just to be a part of the community and the ecosystem.
So if you go to washingtontattoo.org, you'll find all of that information there. I encourage you to go check it out. Sergeant Major retired Mark Reilly, CEO, president of the Washington Tattoo. Any final thoughts that you would want to leave with, particularly to veterans who are looking to write their next chapter?
2. So Nick Antonaccio, my mentor, always said, look, whatever I'm teaching you, whatever I'm showing you, this is not yours to keep. It's only yours to give. And so that was tough because at 11, it made no sense. Every decade, it's made more sense. The second is, I think it's Luke 12:48. There's 2 parts to it. One is, to those who have been given much, much will be required.
Yeah.
The second part of it is, to those who have been entrusted with more, which means like you're a part of something bigger, much more will be asked. And I feel like that's what I'm being asked to do now, is that, how can I do more for our community? So you're allowing me to be a part of your world. And Ted, I am so honored and grateful to be here. So for anything that I can do for you or your listeners or any of your ecosystem or partners, please consider us a resource.
I'm grateful for your friendship and for the mission that you're on. We're lucky to support it. Can't thank you enough for spending time with us here on the Oath and OakLines. We're signing off here. Stay rooted. Find your outpost. Thanks for joining us on the OakLines. Follow Oath and Oak on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Oath and Oak. Stay rooted. Find your outpost.